Be back in a minute. Oh, this lighting again, I can't stand it. Sorry, I'm just going to just wait and see if, anyone will join us. And let's just have a little chat about recent events, which are kind of like the eye of the storm, because it's probably going to be a little bit calmer now just for a short time surrounding the Delphi murders situation. There's been a lot of lives going on and people uploading videos and all sorts of points of view, and there's a lot of material really to get through and watch, and no doubt there's going to be a lot of differing opinions. And I just thought, look, maybe I will go out on a limb. Oh wow, imagine me just going out on a limb. I thought maybe I could go out on a limb and just try and define or refine some of my thoughts on the situation, on what's going on, because I feel like there is a lot of distraction, a lot of, we get tangled up, don't we, in analyzing everything. We don't even sometimes know if what we're looking at is really important or not. And it's very easy to get sent down, let's not say rabbit holes, but down, these tangents, which might be intellectually or legally or philosophically interesting, but do they really set us in good stead when it comes to deciding what we think about a crime case? Is it just something to entertain us or keep us intellectually stimulated or to keep us connected to certain groups? And where do we draw the line and just say, let's pull this all back. Sorry, let's pull it all back, and can we just look at it with some manner of objectivity and remove our emotion and stop being distracted by every little thing? Because guess what? Sure, there's no such thing as coincidence, and everything might be important, and unless you know how it's all connected, maybe you don't know what to discard. But let's face the fact that not every single thing surrounding a case or whatever, it's not all relevant. Even circumstantial evidence, even super compelling circumstantial evidence, can be completely irrelevant, right? And we got to work out, and when we have someone like Doug Carter, who is, for a few years talks about, complexity, and now it's evolved into talking about tentacles. It's very easy to get carried away when we have nothing to base what he's talking about on, really, unless we really know what he's talking about. And he's not telling us what he's talking about, right? Maybe it's just something he says. Um, when people hear words like tentacles relating to the Delphi murders, they start thinking of crime cabals and they start thinking of crime families and people covering things up. And they start thinking about huge worldwide CSAM rings. And it could be nothing of the sort to do with what caused the deaths of Abby and Libby. Okay. This little weasel, Richard Allen, he is most likely to have acted alone. Okay, so I know we feel like it's quite valid to think that the person able to abduct two young, fit, probably maybe brave. We don't know, right? We don't know how they felt in these moments. Girls, that he had to have help to sort of corral them. And now that you see that he's like quite diminutive, maybe people are thinking, yeah, he couldn't have possibly have done this alone. I'm sorry, I don't agree. I think it's highly likely that Richard Allen did act alone. I don't think you keep a crime like this maybe quiet for so long, although there's certainly teams of people that work together to do some really disgusting things. Every now and then they are a man and a woman, as in a husband and wife, but that is rare. Every now and then they are like the complete subhuman dirtbag demons who tortured, killed Cassidy Rainwater, sure, but a lot of these cases, murders like this, and particularly ones that might be sort of maybe sexually motivated or rage or thrill kill motivated, I mean, it's not necessary that there was another person, although there could be witnesses after the fact, and that could be what the probable cause being sealed is all about, right? Protecting these witnesses. But the tentacles that Doug Carter could be talking about might just be that, wow, we're really looking into this dirtbag's past now because we want to know what else he's done. He's built up to these crimes. It's just like we're speculating with the Idaho 4, if it's okay to call them that. Zana, Ethan, who were a couple, Maddie and Kaylee, who were murdered in the university town of Moscow. We're speculating that, the animal slaughters, of a pet dog and of some coyotes, speculating that that was the murderer building up to human victims. So, what would Richard Allen, as the murderer, have done in the 45 years leading up to the time when he did murder Abby and Libby, if he's the murderer, right? Well, have you thought about this? It could be complex because at first they thought Anthony Shots and that particular CSAM ring were involved. Maybe Richard Allen is into his own CSAM, and he's in the perfect position at CVS to have access to family photos, to photos of children doing sport. Maybe he's got quite the collection that he's really not sharing with anyone at all. And maybe that's confused them somehow. I don't know. It doesn't take 6 years to hunt down people that are connected through electronic devices, particularly when they've got so many of the electronic devices that were involved. Look, maybe Richard Allen was catfishing himself and has had contact with Keegan Klein. Maybe this is confused the issue because Keegan looked like such a good candidate to be involved with the murders of Abby and Libby because he was in contact with Libby. The complexity might be just unraveling these threads, like untangling knots, and just trying to tease it all out so they can see where all these threads go. Where do they end? Where are they severed? What are they tied to? Hey, JK. Right, so not only has he got access to see what sort of families around, what children or what people that he might be interested in are around and what they're doing. He knows where they live because he can easily access through a breach of privacy or being given them directly because of his connection to them with his customer service role. It's still a breach of privacy, but he's got access to knowing the demographic and where they live, right? So I've mentioned this before. People might say, but they're not naked children, people doing sports. So how do you know there's anything just crazy in that? Well, the thing is that it's the collection of the that makes it erotica. So you might look at a child that's just, running around kicking a soccer ball and just think, well, that is not erotica. But if there is now a collection of 1,200 images, all of, children doing similar activities, but it's just it's that slither of life, of, focus, and there's 1,200 images. That collection becomes erotica. It's erotic to that person. So Richard Allen has been able to collect probably copies of all sorts of you'd think that I'm still a smoker. My whole family have these lines, by the way. Why do I talk about shit like that? It's just because now that I'm sitting here looking at myself, it makes me examine myself, and I see what other people are seeing. I don't really think about that usually, which is why I'm usually quite wild with my gesturing and my facial expressions. My whole family, we're quite animated, and but it's just really, it's a little bit confronting seeing yourself doing it. That's why I might often look away. I might just look away. So Richard Allen at the CVS pharmacy, no matter what his role has been over the years there, he's had access to people's personal lives, and he could have run off any copies of any photos at any time for himself. Now, the machines, the photo machines, they are audited. So the amount of images being printed, etc., it's audited. And it's just like with the food cost variance in a restaurant or a cafe, right? There are checks and balances. It is audited. The output needs to equal how much is coming in. But depending on Richard Allen's role there, he could he could easily be fiddling that. The items that he skims off, he might be saying he had to reprint because they just weren't exposed properly, or whatever the bullshit and jelly beans would be, right? So okay, so I think firstly I would state that my personal belief is, even though I can't be 100% sure because I'm not in a position to have that particular information, it's my feeling that Richard Allen is the person on the bridge, because I look at him and you can look at BG and you can, it's not a stretch. It's not a stretch. Now, we have to be cautious in some senses because Richard Allen has been charged with felony murder, and we know that the type of felony murder he's charged with means that, look, he could have just abducted them off the bridge. Well, this has resulted in their murder. He doesn't have to be the killer. Remember, we've got Bloody Carter talking about the the person responsible and the killer and all of this bullshit, right? I mean, I wish they'd just stop it already. Enough is enough. But anyway, you know, just saying things for the sake of saying things, maybe. Well, just fucking don't. You know, so Richard Allen, he may have simply have diverted the girls off the bridge or corralled them off the high bridge, told them down the hill. I think his voice could fit easily as well, even though we don't have enough soundbite to do an analysis. I think it fits. And that could be where it ends. Okay, so there could be an actual killer out there. And of course, someone like Tony Klein, this is just an opinion, and I'm not stating that Tony Klein is the murderer for legal purposes. You know, a person like Tony Klein, who we know is violent, who we know is capable of rage, who we know is a sadist, who we know through communication that Kegan Kline was having with his catfishing victims, you know, we can't discard that Kegan was always asking about, oh, a father figure, an older man, would you do this? Would you do that? So, sure, you know, Tony Klein, Kegan Kline would have to be, it doesn't take wild speculation to think that we could have them having some involvement with Richard Allen, and they are making this little group of perpetrators who are essentially involved in the killings of Abby and Libby. And then, you know, you can extend that further and say, okay, and then there was imagery taken and sold, dispersed, distributed, and that was done, you know, from a starting point of Las Vegas, for example. But, you know, none of that could be true. None of that could be true. It could be things that have happened to other victims, you know, in Delphi and all over Indiana. And indeed, it's gone national because we know from things we've talked about here in the past with these CSAM rings, there was the operation a little while ago that wrapped up, that took in America, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, you know, just spatterings of this network on all these different continents. So these douchebags do find each other. They don't have to be in the same county or country. And so it's just a natural it's an inherent part of these CSAM networks that they're just widespread because they're not bound by geography, you know, because it's electronic now, isn't it, right? And so these rings are international, and that's just the bottom line. But Richard Allen doesn't have to have shared a damn thing about this part of his life with anybody. And it seems to me, this is me going out on, this is, so number one, the limb that I'm on right now, happy to change, happy to have the branch sawed off the tree, cut down. I think it's very likely Richard is a lone wolf, and he's the person on the bridge. He took the girls off the bridge and he murdered them. He made it home probably through Bridge Creek, and because the way the operation was handled by law enforcement, maybe themselves getting confused and convoluted and discombobulated by the Keegan-Klein situation with Anthony Shots and the knowledge that they had that straight away. Sorry, I'm right up in your grill, but I'm just leaning on a little wall here. Maybe it's them that have been clouded and confused by the complexity when it was pretty fucking simple. As simple as a man who has fantasized about Highbridge as a location ever since he arrived and discovered it soon after 2006. And this location was somewhere he had access to easily from his home and could come and go probably quite safely unnoticed. And maybe that's just what happened. And just on the off chance that he was seen there, or maybe because he wanted to involve himself in the search on the 14th, and maybe he has said to a conservation officer, yeah, I was at the trails. I don't believe that he's necessarily said he was on the bridge. Anyone showing up for the search or producing themselves just to try and, make it less suspicious if it's found that they were seen, should have been looked at very intently. But were law enforcement and even the FBI, the same FBI that, didn't seem to give a shit about the gymnasts of the USA gymnastics troupe, right? When Larry Nassar was abusing them horrifically for years. Maybe they didn't see the forest for the trees, right? Maybe they didn't see the forest for the trees, the simplicity and the truth of this little Richard Allen and what he was capable of and what he did on his own. So is the complexity, is it just clouding everything, right? We're yet to find out. We don't know what's in this probable cause affidavit. I'm hoping it's not going to be, if it turns out that it's as long as Barry Morphew's arrest affidavit, then it could just be filled with bullshit. All these the other six dwarves of, Indiana County, right? And the same, just throwing in everything onto the cart. So the Anthony Shots CSAM ring and all sorts of other things that just have nothing to do with the case and are actually going to undermine the prosecutorial probability of success. But the tentacles might just mean that they are being very pragmatic and smart and want to know what else this guy's been up to in the past. People do cite Evansdale as a possible past crime, Richard Allen's, and that is the crime. It's a double homicide of younger girls, so not young women, where Richard Allen, if it was sexual in nature, would have been considered a hebephile, but if their murders were sexual in nature, which we don't know because the girls weren't found until 6 months later, Elizabeth and Lyric, two cousins, he would have been considered a pedophile. There are, sure, he was in traveling distance at the time. It's two girls. Maybe he really had a taste for it. He knew he could do it, right? And he'd had maybe downtime and he had built up, and he just had to release that tension, that fantasy, and the opportunity arose and he took it. But with Lyric and Elizabeth, okay, now they were on their bicycles. They're out doing what kids do. and should be safe doing, but I guess, should be woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know, we all have to make decisions every day about what's risk management in lives, and particularly when it comes to the children. I mean, I grew up free range. It's sad that kids can't, maybe, but in Lyric, they were actually abducted. Now, technically, Libby and Abby were abducted, okay, but they were actually taken. Their bikes left behind on the trail where they were taken from, where they were taken. They were discovered 6 months later, 25 miles away. Sure, was Alan trying to get the girls away somewhere? I mean, we don't know of any other property that he owns, right? Like, does he have a little hunting cabin? Okay. No, I mean, he doesn't seem like he's got that type of means where he has other properties somewhere. Maybe he knows of an abandoned building, right? Maybe he wanted to take them somewhere, but why wouldn't he be taking them to the private drive if he's taken his car from home up the private drive to the end of the bridge? No, I think he was on foot. I think he wanted to do something to them in the environment. I think this is different to Lyric and Elizabeth, but it doesn't mean that it's not the same perpetrator, okay? You can have different MOs, you can have different things happen. There's precedence for this. It could have been Richard Allen in Evansdale. In that case, they were taken away and they weren't discovered until 25 miles away, until 6 months later. And this is something interesting, though, about Evansdale, and I can't remember the person's name, but I think it might have been an FBI profiler who made the announcement that it was possible, and I think she said this 7 days after they disappeared, it's possible that they're alive and being held somewhere. She was actually quite certain that up until the 7-day point, might still be alive, but she thought after that, from what I just recollect, after that they were probably no longer alive, and they were discarded. Yeah, exactly. So hi Ginger, and said, yeah, Johnny, so but this might be what the tentacles are, right? What the complexity is. Are they looking at crimes that have been committed elsewhere that could possibly fit Richard Allen? Is this an excuse if they had a suspect in mind but didn't make a move because they wanted to know what would lead up to the murders? I think it's a sorry excuse. And I think it's a sorry excuse if, am I yelling at you guys? I think it's a sorry excuse if he was connected to the Keegan Klein CSAM ring and they've just spent their time wanting to get as many people and as much information on that as possible, so they've sort of held back. I think, wham, they should have just gone in there regardless. Fuck everything else. They owed that to the girls. Just get this mofo off the streets, because meantime, what else could he be doing or doing? People's photos is enough, okay? Having possession of their images for the sake of CP, that's enough, okay? That is victimizing someone. It doesn't matter if they know about it or not, right? So BG, I think he's BG. I think it's very likely still that he's a lone wolf, although I won't be surprised either. I won't be surprised either way, but my bets are hedged towards lone wolf. And, I think they obviously should be looking into past crimes. He's certainly had space and time away from family when he's been working in situations where he's not with his wife the whole time. So he's had plenty of freedom at certain times in his life to lead a double life. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I think it is entirely putrid this whole scenario, the whole situation around the sketches being released when they actually had video and audio. That is it. And particularly when they keep saying, don't look above the fucking neck. What a joke. Oh, here's some headshots. Here's some headshot sketchy witchies, right? Oh, but we don't want you thinking about the person's face. We just want you looking at his body and his mannerisms. I mean, sorry, but yeah, face slap. So I 100% hate every bit of crap that's gone on about the sketches. I hate the way that the sketches were managed and the way the second one was released and all that's been said about it and Doug Carter's ludicrous statements about them, right? Actually telling you to dismiss the first release, the older guy, and then that they believe the young guy is the person responsible, and clearly even families were deceived or confused because Anna has clearly stated on James Hibbert that, and this is in 2019, was it maybe before that 2019 presser, that, her understanding was that, well, that investigated that person to the end of their capabilities and had assurance. They assured themselves that this person wasn't anything to do with it, no matter who it was, and now they were moving on to a better suspect, the next suspect, right? I mean, what? But now and then, it evolves to Carter saying, if you put them together, it'll be something of between the two or whatever he's saying. I mean, what a load of tosh and baloney. Now, we know he's there as a talking head, kind of, even though, of course, he's more important than just that. But, he's a facilitator. He's a he's a figurehead sort of thing, right? And he's the face of. He's not an active investigator as such. And sometimes I feel like he would have been better just to shut up and say less. He's so theatrical. And that just makes me feel even more strongly that is all just posturing and effect, because when he has something concrete to say, he doesn't do all of that twitchy, pathetic, theatrical thing, right? Look, I don't dislike Carter, but he infuriates me. I'm not trying to get down on the guy, okay? I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a bad guy. But I think, has he done justice to the case? Has he done his role well? I mean, he's feeding the village of the damned, isn't he? Giving them so much fodder. Now they're trying to make it into like some sort of, look, I don't want to talk about them, but some sort of, what are the, some sort of Marvel universe, right? The tentacles and the gothic, Gotham City sort of, anyway. Oh, there we go. So, what do I think the next would be? Thinking about this whole situation with bail and with the release, I think we should get the information. I think not only do the people, forget the world, forget us outside looking in onlookers who might still be emotionally invested. But, let's just think of Indiana. Let's think of the state of Indiana. Let's think of the county of Carroll County and the town of Delphi, the citizens of Indiana, the citizens of Delphi, and think about what is owed them after 6 years. 6 years of having all these authorities, all these organizations, all these different bodies telling them that they are doing something about finding these killers. I bet they haven't knocked on every single door in Delphi. And if they didn't find someone home, did they go and knock again? I say not. For the last several months, I've been saying they need to pull their bootstraps up, get on the gumshoe, and just go and do some decent policing, some good old Bobby work, some good old plod. It's not FBI profiling that solve cases. Sorry, FBI profilers. It's not, right? You don't solve cases. Statistically, you're shown to be often wrong in the assumptions that you make and the profiles that you draw. It's fascinating. And maybe as a hindsight exercise, it's interesting to analyze people, but it shouldn't be projecting who they are because they're shown to have such sharp bias. People who've actually studied cases and put the stats together and then, bring in the things that these FBI investigators have said, they are so often off the mark and bias. Anyway, I don't want to go down that track either. But the city of Delphi deserves to know where all this time and money have gone. What has it reaped? Okay, they've had to invest so much, and now they're investing in these two attorneys for Alan, okay, and they deserve to see what is in this arrest app. Do I think it should be redacted? Sure, because I don't think people have a right as such to learn of these very private, terrifying moments that Abby and Libby went through. I don't think that what can be seen as degrading and just certain information about the girls that should be redacted, but we need to know what led law enforcement to Richard Allen, when they were led there, how they've gone about gathering physical evidence. Okay, we know that there are different types of evidence. You've got circumstantial, and certainly cases can be won on very strong circumstantial evidence, but usually you would need physical evidence, so that is tangible things, and it does include things like DNA. Do I think they've got DNA? Actually, I think it's likely that they don't. I think it's very likely that they don't. But they should have other physical evidence. They've raided Ellen's house, and I hope that they have found evidence that maybe in his fire pit he's burned particular clothing that maybe could match. Maybe he's held on to a pair of boots but just doesn't wear them in public but uses them around the garden. Is this true about him stealing maybe some gardening equipment? I mean, that seems like the act of a man that's maybe ready to push a few to test his luck, to give himself some adrenaline, to insert something into his life, because maybe he was getting a little bit itchy. Maybe he's off the street at just the right time because he could not stay dormant any longer. Okay, because maybe he has stayed dormant as a perpetrator all this time since February 2017, and maybe he just couldn't handle it any longer. And maybe he has started taking risks because risky behavior has been part of his life, his lifestyle for many years, right? That is very possible. Anyone committing these violent crimes or, whatever crimes he might have committed building up to the alleged killing of Abby and Libby, if that's his role, because with what we know, we don't know if they are saying that he's actually been the one to physically do that. That he's just arrested in relation and it's on felony murder. He could have just abducted them. There could be someone else. We deserve to know. And maybe he wasn't able to contain himself any longer and he's starting to come out with risky behavior, and maybe stealing from a neighbor is that, okay? So that could be true, but we need to know. We deserve to know. Citizens of Indiana have a right to know, at least. And so I think it goes without saying, again, I've said it many times, that I do not think Mike Patty, should be going around getting petitions. I don't give a fuck that 40,000 people can sign it. Now that's commendable on their part that they've got so much support, but it's not a surprise that they have so much support. But Becky Patty is nothing to do with law, and she's not the be-all and end-all word, and she doesn't know the right way necessarily, and she can't be unbiased, and she's got her own reasons, and she can't necessarily be thinking clearly all the time. And it's actually, even though her business is finding justice for Abby and Libby, it's none of her business legally what goes on in the course of doing that until the law changes. Well, sorry, Becky Patty, I'm sorry, but you've got no right to demand that the probable cause documents, the affidavit, are withheld indefinitely or until next year or whatever. I just 100% disagree. And I don't think that anything should pervert the course of justice. But there's limits and there's lines to be drawn. And, that's crossing it. So, past crime, lone wolf, sketches, right? Now, this probable cause and holding him on bail, offering him bail or not. Well, look, they could set bail for millions of dollars. He wouldn't be able to meet it. I would hope he doesn't have a benefactor somewhere that just thinks it might be hilarious to get him out. So I don't think he'd make bail anyway, but I think on principle, well, considering the nature of the crime, he shouldn't be out on bail. And he shouldn't be offered it at all. He should be held without bail until whatever. And if he got out on bail, it's my belief that he would be a suicide risk, and can you imagine the lack of closure? And because you would never know, and it wouldn't matter what he said, whether he could, unless he made a definitive confession or something that was without a shadow of a doubt because of what he said in it before he suicided. Imagine if he just killed himself. You wouldn't know if he just did it because of the shame and the stress or the, the pressure or the depression or the whatever, or the way he felt threatened, or, you wouldn't have any. It would be such torture for the families if that happened. He has to be kept alive. He has to go and face the music, and people need to understand as clearly as possible what happened. They need the truth, and not their truth, not his truth, the truth. And he is a high risk of suicide, and he'd be a high risk of going on the lam. Okay, so Um, so what else? Okay, so we're unsure what is in this probable cause. Carter, of course, is kind of obliged to say, you know, well, he found it perfectly acceptable and is backing this. Hey, Otto is backing the arrest because he's read the probable cause, several times and it's all above board. Well, of course. And of course, the lawyers, Baldwin and whatever the other one is that have been appointed to Richard Allen, of course, they're going to be saying um, it doesn't have the physical evidence or whatever. I mean, we don't know what's in there, right? But I hope there is physical, just tangible evidence. I hope there's no just hearsay. I hope that there is physical evidence. I hope it's not all just circumstantial. What other types of evidence are there? Yeah. Um, Baldwin, one of the lawyers or attorney, whatever he is, I'm not sure, sorry. I guess he's an attorney, is saying that it's not mentioning someone else, it's not mentioning a partner in the crime. Okay, but would it? I don't know. Would they hide that? Or would that have to come out into the probable cause if it's anything to do with Richard and the crime? I would think so. So I'm hoping this is a very short, concise document and not one of those 130-page nightmares like in the Barry Morphew debacle, right? And I have a feeling it is. I mean, after all this time, it's nearly like they're not really under pressure. They might be putting themselves under pressure. Certainly, before Carter moves on to his other ambitions in life, which is probably to be governor of Indiana, he probably does want to have this under his belt for personal reasons, for his professional reasons. He would want to solve this crime. He would want to solve Flora. And I'm sure that having an arrest in this case for Abby and Libby, it has really brought blood to mind for him. Not that they'd be very far from his mind. I'm sure it's really made him feel quite emotional about not being able to do that for the Flora girls. And maybe that's why he visited Flora. Now, I know we've got the inmates drawing of bridge guy with the flames on the bridge, but that could be artistic license, right? Maybe we should ask Jay, true crime recliner, to give some sort of professional discourse about this other artist's drawing and what he thinks about the flames. Is that inmate someone that knows Richard Allen? And when the crime was committed against Abby and Libby, did he suspect someone that he knows, perhaps Richard Allen? And did he also suspect Allen of being an arsonist? Now, history also tells us, our education can also tell us, that arson is a precursor. Okay, arson, it doesn't have to be the precursors that, this risky criminal behavior that Allen may have been getting away with for decades in his life. It doesn't have to be violent crime against people or children. I feel like it probably includes CSAM of some sort, or just images of some sort of violent nature, or whatever he considers erotica. But, you know, it doesn't mean that he's ever acted out in that way, but he could be, um, you know, people, they want to have high experience. They want to have, you know, they need to feel things, and people need more, you know, tense things and intense things to feel things, and they get, you know, pleasure out of it. And maybe part of his sadism is causing harm, whether it's just causing harm to property or taking life by damaging property, as in setting fire. We know Flora fire was arson that occurred in November 2016 and killed Keone Kiara, Keralee, and oh goodness, could someone please, for the sake of respect, put the fourth girl's name in chat? My mind's gone blank. So, I mean, not releasing this affidavit as well. I mean, look, it's not that there might not be some very valid reasons to keep it sealed for the moment, but they've had long enough. If there are witnesses that they needed to ensure are safe, you know, witnesses safe away from the YouTube tentacles, right? The YouTube, I mean, you know, wouldn't it be ironic if the tentacles that Carter talk about is all the invasive investigation that goes on from one side of the screen into real life, into others, right? I don't know. But look, if it's because they needed to lock Kathy Allen down for a time, I mean, I wonder how many times they've interviewed her, or indeed interrogated her, or indeed given her lie detector tests or anything like that. How long have they been watching her, monitoring her, bugging her, electronics, etc.? They've had long enough. If they think that she was going to be able to stand witness against her husband, and be state witness, they've had long enough to get her somewhere safe, to lock her down, to interview her, to debrief her, whatever the terms are, whatever the process would be, right? Hey, Lips. I was just getting to that. Yeah. And what Lipsha just said about they got lucky, that's what I think happened too. And I think what they're scared of is that they've got fucking egg on their faces. And okay, think about this, Lipsha, right? This is just making me so furious. Okay, so law enforcement. Okay, so Tobe has said, I know that voice. Okay, he said, I know that voice. Yeah, he probably does. He's probably, he may have even socialized around Richard Allen, even though Allen and Kathy, they seem like a pretty close unit. I think even social, they are each other's best friend, and they have acquaintances maybe, but maybe not really close friendships. I don't know. It seems like they've got extended family. There seems to have been nephews and nieces around, so cousins of their daughter Brittany. But I think that's the limit of their relationships that they nurtured into say having people over at their house and things like that, right? I would say they were a tight team. I've talked about the codependency theory before. These situations, they only make each other deteriorate. They don't heal each other or cure each other of all their neuroses. And poor qualities. They just make each other worse and they get more and more dysfunctional. So do you remember, you'll remember this, Lips, that there was rumor, or there was an actual article about it, or maybe a YouTuber interviewed someone that said it. They had asked in the CVS, because your pharmacy, sorry, I'm taking a long time to get around to this, but I just want to, because I want to, sorry, I want to say this. Your pharmacies in Australia is kind of different to what we have. I mean, in America are quite different to what we have here. A few of your, the way your stores operate and everything, they are a little bit different. And we usually call them chemists, and we have pharmacists working in there, and they dispense drugs, and some of them are compounding pharmacies, some of them aren't. And they usually just then sell healthcare products, hygiene products, cosmetic products, right? But I mean, look at the size of your building. That CVS building in Delphi looks huge, and it looks like it's maybe a bit of a hub, of a one-stop shop for a lot of really practical things that people need around town. I wonder if that's right. Lots of tools, maybe extending into being some kind of store where you buy storage things and items for the home and that sort of thing. I don't know. I'm guessing. I should go on and have a look at the website and see what's sold there. But do you remember law enforcement went into the CVS to make inquiries about the knives that they sold, and could they advise who bought these knives? They might even have asked Richard Allen. Now, what's interesting in some aspects is, were they confused by his height? Because who was it? Remember, was it Gray Hughes, though, that worked out, he hired someone or something to work out, some university students or something to work out, some engineering students, how high Richard Allen might have been, and they came up with between 5'6" and 5'10", and maybe law enforcement didn't do their own research into that, and they agreed or just ran with it like we all mostly did, and maybe that's been putting them off because he just seemed taller and younger or something, right? I mean, if you just put him into proportion, I mean, he looks like Bridge Guy, I think that's a no-brainer, but I'm happy to be wrong. As long as they've got a just arrest in some regards, although I think it's possible he's 5'6", and that the law enforcement officers were all a little bit taller. Maybe they have to be 5'8" to get into law. I know they keep dropping the standards, right? Good. Okay, so Lipsha does remember hearing that, right? Isn't that freaking creepy? He had opportunity. He's had contact with the family, not charging them for images, and images that I would 100%, maybe this is what's in these little books, right? The books that were taken as physical evidence from his house in West Delphi, little notebooks. Maybe they're little photo wallets, right? Maybe he doesn't risk anything electronically like Keegan Klein. Maybe that's just so far removed, and it's it's been confusing the investigation. Maybe he just keeps everything in his analog. Maybe he's keeping everything just in the tangible hard copy, right? And he would be old school enough to do that, and he's had access. He's someone that's put himself into position with his roles at Walmart and with CVS where he can access personal private information that normally as part of your role there you're coming under the Privacy Act and all sorts of things, right? So maybe they have found pictures of Libby and Abby and all sorts of people from around town, and he's got his little, oh God, but he's had access to, because they were taking things in well before that, right? Kelsey was a keen photographer. He could have had his eye on Libby and Kelsey from Kelsey's photos or from the family photos. I mean, my God. I mean, look, the smiles that you see on those girls' faces when they're together in their images before this, at a time when they never conceived, they've already gone through hell. They've had a really difficult time. And even though they know how awful life can be, how difficult life can be, how disappointing it can be, and how you can have trauma at a young age, with difficult parents and marriage breakups and things like that, they could never have conceived that this was their future. And their smiles are so pure, and their smiles are just like it's like that innocence of anybody without a clue of what's to come, right? And this is just the tragedy of all this foreshadowing and all this hindsight. I mean, if you look at your own family, if you've got something in your life that divides genuine happiness and just innocence with grief and just with this loss of innocence. Look at the way, even though in later times and maybe years down the track you're all together and you're happy, there's always something there. There's always a trace. And those smiles, that openness, that just the confidence, the joy they have with each other, that you can see it. Those, I don't even want to start talking about these people, but the people I mean, and the things that they say. How can they look at the faces of those girls and them together, and the smiles and that freshness and that openness and just that it's so untainted and it's so real, right? And their smiles together, Kelsey and Libby and the family, they were friends. They were close. Okay, sure. Secrets, lies, whatever, right? That's natural. They would have come full circle. They would have been living these parallel lives no matter what they did in life separately. That they would have come round to being exceptionally close. There is nothing like blood. And yeah, just to see that in the photos. And I'm sure that to a predator that Richard Allen might be, wow, I mean, how appealing. And he's losing his own daughter. His own daughter is asserting her independence leading up to 2017, leading up to her marriage, which I believe she got married maybe in 2018. So she possibly had met her future husband, was asserting her independence, was aligning and was giving that utmost loyalty to another man. This is a natural part of life. Leaving home. And it could be a trigger, right? And he could have been fantasizing about those girls for a long time prior. We don't know what the history is of the family. Am I boring? Am I boring you guys, by the way? Because I just come on here and talk about what I want to talk about. I'm so selfish. But, it's my channel. But, I don't mean it like that. It's your channel. It's Humanimal channel. But I mean, I just get here and I just offload what I'm thinking about. And I just prattle on and on, quite like a windbag. Eventually, I sometimes get around to a few good points. So, I really do wonder about that. And I don't think he's necessarily sharing, because I think he's actually, I don't know. I think maybe he's the person you think, there's people that, you see them all the time. They're locals in your pub, right? You go there and you're going to see them on a certain stool on a certain night. And there's camaraderie of sorts, and you have these different conversations, but how intimate is it really, right? And what do you really know about them? And, I feel like the Allens might be that type of family, perhaps, and enigmas in a way, really, because they're always there, but you know nothing about them. Yeah. And I feel like he does. He has to have this double life, this private life. And I don't think he's necessarily sharing or trying to find clan about it, because maybe part of, is there pleasure in having that sort of secret? And how, and if his version of CSAM and CP or whatever he might have been into, and we don't even know if it's part of it, but it probably is, he might never be one to go on certain apps and make profiles and to seek out that way, because he did have opportunity to see images and to take them for himself and to be voyeuristic. He didn't maybe risk or need to risk anything electronic. Maybe it didn't even occur to him. So, because if he was, I just find it so impossible to believe that somehow or other he wouldn't have been traced within the 6 years. I just can't see it. And it could well be a big coinky dink that Keegan Klein, as Anthony Schatz, and whomever else was using that catfishing account, that he was in contact with Libby, and so were other people. Because frankly, if young people, and they are in epidemic proportions, and it causes me such pain to see. It's just such an overwhelming thing to think about, how many of these just young kids, 9, 10, 11, are being they're so vulnerable on YouTube and all these other apps. They are surrounded by predators. They are being made contact with probably on a regular basis. To think that it would be only one is probably a gross mistake, like a misstep, or so I feel like there can be, it's kind of like all this just circumstantial evidence that has nothing to do with Richard Allen and what he allegedly did to these girls. So he's had the opportunity to, if it's targeted, to pick and choose. He might have had his eye on many, many people, but he might have specifically wanted Kelsey and or Libby, and maybe even Abby, but because of his daughter and the impressionistic, idea that they're similar looking, That could have been how he targeted her, and it could have been dumb luck that he found her there on the bridge. Maybe he had seen images from geocaching that Kelsey had taken of them out and about. Maybe he knew wouldn't you love to just see the Paddy's photo albums and just to see what Richard Allen could have seen and known about the family just from that, about where they went? He could have just taken a punt, taken a risk, and could not believe his luck, and he acted, and he could act with such surety because he had fantasized about it so long and so thoroughly that he could just do it like a muscle memory sort of thing, like, right? If you're going somewhere new and you just study it and you look at the maps and you look at images and you drive that road maybe on Google Maps and then you go there, you're so confident. There's that landmark. Next, I'll see this. And he could have had that modus operandi, or the steps of his crime already thought out so in advance. Maybe it could have just been anyone and he couldn't believe it when he saw the girls that he saw. Who knows? But it doesn't have to have anything to do with Keegan Klein. We know Keegan Klein is a fucking liar. I do hope she turns state witness, Otto, yes. Even if it is that she is honest in interviews about his coming and goings, about maybe things that he did. So I've talked before about other killers and the things that they would do, and the guy that would come home and just disappear into the shed. He used to spend all his time in his shed or something like that. Kathy Allen, remember, hindsight is 2020. We need to give her a break. Nobody should be accusing her of knowing anything until such time as she tells you she knew something, okay? Or law enforcement tell us, right? Or, it comes out some way, in some evidentiary way. But hindsight is 2020, and she may be able to now say, well, he was actually quite secretive about some of the things that he would do. He controlled me around this aspect of our life, that sort of thing, right? Yeah. And also, okay, now he's pretty cool, calm, and collected seemingly, although actually I think he looks really pissed off in his mugshots. And he could be subdued in some way chemically, to go in and make his court appearances. Who knows? Maybe, he is offered some sort of, like a Xanax or a benzodiazepine of some sort, right? To keep him calm. Who knows? I don't know. But was it the Green River Killer who for 2 years just put on such a performance? There were all these shenanigans going on about his, I'm a fiddler, I'm actually fiddling with a pig. So many shenanigans. And then in the end, after 2 years, just to come out and go, oh yeah, I done it. Yeah, I done it. Guilty as charged. To scores of murders, right? So we shouldn't have any see, this is the fucking thing. We don't want to have any preconceived notions, but of course our imaginations are going to get away from us until we know the facts. But we shouldn't be thinking anything like, he doesn't look innocent. I mean, he doesn't look guilty. He's not acting guilty. Yeah. I mean, I feel like in that letter where he was throwing himself on the mercy of the state to get some counsel, I feel like the first thing I might have said, if that were me, was, I am innocent and I respectfully request the state's support improving my innocence as a citizen, as a taxpayer of this county, and as someone falsely accused. I need help in getting justice for myself, right? But no, he didn't say that. It was quite a sucky little letter, wasn't it? His first offence unlikely. Oh yeah. Oh, um, yeah, it's really unlikely that it's just the first major thing that he's been caught for, right? Now, I think it's incorrect. People are saying, oh, he's got a DV background. Why wasn't he looked into more thoroughly? No, this is another Richard Allen. It's not the Richard M. Allen that has been charged with felony murder in the case of Abby and Libby, okay? I think that might have been someone else, but am I getting confused too? Are there two incidences, one that's not right and one where he did end up going to hospital? Lips will know, Lipsha will know. Yeah. I don't think we should have to wait on tenterhooks any longer. I think the more of a vacuum there is, the more people can fill it, right, with their, bullshit and jelly beans. Yeah, so I had a few, I had just written these notes down just very quickly, those little points that I want to talk about, and that was really it. What else? What else? Yeah, it might not be related to any other of the bullshit that's come up to do with, because of the investigation, right? I mean, I believe Keegan has been saying again about the red Jeep, that he was there in the red Jeep. Was that another time that he said it recently, or am I just hearing people repeat what he's actually apparently said on in a text message now? But he's a damn liar, and he knows his life is over. He knows his life out in society where he's got access to all the things that he wants is over. The sick things about this type of predator is often they are put into units with each other, right? Because otherwise they are in danger. Isn't it funny how men in prison will turn a blind eye maybe to someone who's committed a crime against a child, getting shivved, murdered somehow. But when another man is actually being sexually assaulted in prison, they just, don't say anything, don't get involved. Is it some sort of weird standard double? I don't know. But, the terrible thing is that these men end up actually having some sort of supply. They can talk about their crimes, their the thing that interests them, the thing that they are, most interested in life. They can talk with each other about it. They talk about ways to groom people. They can pretend to offer counseling so that they can share experiences and share modes of grooming and that sort of thing, right? And share their knowledge. It's fucking sick, because let's face it, some of these mofos get out, and mostly they get out and they will offend straight away. That's another reason why he should not get bail, right? He might go, Thomas Jerome Bruce on society, right? He could go on a spree. Is it a spree, would you say? yeah, he could go on like a maniacal course of action where he just thinks, oh, fuck it. I'm out on bail, but I know I'm screwed eventually. They're just going to have me in jail. What if he just, it's just so awful to consider what might happen. I think he should be held. And that's the bottom line. Alan's kind of old to just start doing this, says Otto. Yeah, right. I don't think it's. Yeah, I wonder if this is what they're trying to do, is keep most things quiet. Maybe there are things about his history in there. But, I mean, what are the attorneys for Alan, you know, ethically allowed to say about it because they know that they are swaying public opinion? Can they just make such bullshit up as to say there is nothing to found this? I mean, sure, they're there to defend his rights, but surely they might be having to come from an angle that is defendable, like talking about the technicalities and the procedures and things like that. Anything that might have denigrated his rights or something, right? But, you'd think that maybe they wouldn't be able to say the things they did recently. I actually have to go and listen properly to the statements. I've only seen sound bites that other people, sorry, I haven't listened to them. But, you know, if the affidavit contains, say, things that they suspect about his past, maybe. No, I don't know. No, I mean, there's only one charge. If, what about this? If they didn't have any evidence that Alan committed the killing, would they have just done what they did in the Morphew case and thrown in everything else, such as, because Morphew had several charges. It wasn't just murder of Suzanne Morphew. So would they have thrown in other things so that they could just, okay, well, we'll take the felony murder off the case, but we're leaving it at, stalking, abduction. I mean, I know the felony murder in itself can simply mean abduction, but would they not have just listed some other things? I don't know. I really feel like they think, oh, but then you've got McClelland saying he thinks other people are involved. Well, we don't know in what context. Does it just mean as witnesses, as accessories after the fact? Because that means involvement. I've said this so many times before. If you knew something and you could have come forward earlier, 6 years down the track, well, screw you. You can go to prison as well. You're an accomplice now. You are an accomplice, and even if it's the minutest of something that you know that can place a person or place them with a weapon or place them with the blue jacket or whatever it is. If Kathy Allen, for example, fucking knows anything, she's not just now a witness, she's an accomplice. So I wonder maybe if it's to protect the fact that they are going to arrest McClelland. But, we are so used to these people speaking at odds with each other, having different tones, different type of output, different affect, saying completely confusing, disparate things, and all seeming like, well, did he just speak out of line? Did he just make an oopsie? Is he just making things up? Is he just not right? There's only so much you just, suspend your faith and trust, right? And or make the excuses. Well, people are fallible. No one's infallible. They're not perfect, but they're professional. And I don't know. It's just Sometimes I just think it's all just been an absolute joke. What the fuck have they been doing for 6 years? They've been running after these red herrings. And no wonder Richard Allen maybe stayed around. Maybe he thought this is a fucking lark. Right? Yeah, I think they've stumbled across something, or I think they have finally gone back, done some actual fucking police work instead of thinking they are smarty pants profilers and, we know our town, and we're working on the electronic angle, and we're just waiting for that tip because we've, maybe that false sense of, well, we've got the image, we just need someone to recognize that and done. And, they've got the crime scene. I mean, I think for all the damage that they did at the crime scene, that they may well have done a very good job of collecting everything that was there, because remember, Mr. Ron Logan said that it was pristine. Now this is completely opposite to how Debbie Collier's scene was, where she was found where there were gloves left behind, bits of tarp, God knows fucking what, and they had to go back and find that one item that they thought was missing because they didn't do a very good job in the first place, which then has thrown all this accusation onto family members of Debbie Collier, and then they've gone back and maybe done a better job, found what was missing, realized that every single item that should have been there was, and that they could rule it as suicide once the autopsy and toxicity reports are in. So the pristineness of the site, I mean, that bodes well for having a lot of physical evidence of the crime. So that's good. But what else were they doing? And I'm with Lipsher on this one. I think they got lucky and they've just gone around and wow, score. And then that's been that. Yeah. They should have interviewed over and over again, and then sure, okay, can they get done for harassment? I don't know. They should, door knocking, going back and back to every single business. It's not enough to have posters up. Talking to their favorite TV shows, HLN and I mean, it's so infuriating when you're on the outside looking in, when you're looking at, say, Debbie Collier's scene, and how, on some hands they seem to have done a good job, and on others they've fucked up so royally, and there's real life repercussions and things that people will never get over in their life on top of all the grief that they already feel. And you look at the Idaho 4, and the fact that they're only now just trying to look through the woods with a fine-tooth comb, right? And it's a perfect entry-exit point for someone to come and go, and anything could have been left there intentionally or unintentionally as they left the scene, right? Or maybe we're standing there smoking, or maybe there's footprints, maybe there's blood dropped, maybe your weapon was even dropped, maybe something from the house is even dropped out there, who knows? But hey, Bets. And yeah, it's so important. It's that initial police work, making sure you just write everything down properly, that you collect everything, that you're ticking the, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, that you follow through with each interview you're supposed to do, that you follow through properly with each lead that you're going to do, and that this is all just recorded properly with the correct chain of, chain of possession or whatever it is, you all know what I mean, and that it's just done like that so that later you can come back. It's so airtight. or the information is there that you need, that tells you everything you need to know, or the evidence is there collected properly untainted and admissible in court, you know. But from that first way the search was done, and people going around I don't know. Anyway, but it seems like they've collected every scrap of everything that they could from the scene, but you know, it's probably containing so many red herrings because so many people were through the site. Hi, Fran. I've been yakking away for an hour and a half here. So I'm just about running out of things. Does anyone have any comment to make on anything that you want to talk about, or anything to say about the case that I haven't just spoken about for now that is a big glaring omission? I mean, I've made so many videos on it, but of course not since, you know, the arrest or anything. Now we've got, you know, now we're kind of starting from a new spot. Hey, Blind Squirrel. Nice to see everybody. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what a moment in these people's career, right? But they've got a huge road ahead of them. But isn't it just so fascinating watching how people conduct themselves? You know, didn't Tobe just come out all God, you know, how righteous everything was, and you know, but he seems to have a completely different angle to McLennan than to Carter, and they don't seem to have this sort of united front. And is it just, you know, I mean, surely this isn't part of some huge, amazing plan, right? That, you know, surely it's not part of I've just modded you, Lips and Bets, because for the first time, well, I've had them in comment sections under certain videos, usually funny enough about the ones where I am speaking out about the true village of the damned and things like that. But we had a few sex bots in. And because I'm just on a phone, and it might be a bit hard, so I hope you don't mind. I've just modded you. If you don't want to be a mod, just let me know. Yeah, and I refuse to believe that if you think about the last 6 years and all the ways that they've talked to us and the thank you so much, Lips. Yeah. And all the ways that they've talked to us, the things that they've said, alluded to, all these statements that they've made, right? You just got, if you could run that through a computer somehow, I mean, is it possible? I think not. I don't think it's possible. No, it's because I don't make sense, Otto. It's because I don't construct my sentences very well, where I'm just rambling on. What I'm trying to say is it's not possible for it to be a part of this genius scheme where they have, imagine them sitting around in the war room, right? Imagine them in the war room, say, and they are, you know, strategizing, and they've got their models of the town, or, you know, just imagine, or even we could imagine it all high tech, and they're using the glass board and it's all electronic, or they're writing on a fucking chalkboard or a whiteboard. But, you know, I just imagine this war room, right, and this big snooker table type thing where that you know, they are strategizing and trying to come up with the case, and they're taking in all angles of who might be possible persons of interest and suspects, and how they might connect to everything, and what they need to do to weed everything out, and how they are going to find these people, and then what they're going to do to catch them, and all of that. I I am sorry, but the way that it's all been done, there is no way that it is by design. This has not been an investigation by design. Sure, there is some aspect to it that is, but no, this is not evil genius level strategizing, except he's doing it for good, by Carter or Kim Riley or anyone, or even the FB fucking I, right? Because frankly, what faith do we have in the FBI that they're solving cases and that they're not doing things other than, I mean, look, the good thing about the FBI is that they are well, it's federal. So basically, the usefulness of the FBI is the fact that it's federal, right? But I think, and resources. So they've got federal resources. But I don't know, do we anoint them? Do we anoint them with this sort of holy, with this otherworldly ability and everything, when we know how badly they let citizens down, when we don't know what their priorities are sometimes, and when we don't know that they're really doing things for the good of the citizens other than the good of what might be right for states, for what would you say, for safety, for the country, right? For the, corporations that run the country, for the money aspect, for international relations, whatever it is, right? Wheeling and dealing behind the scenes. I don't think it's just the CIA that does that, is it? I don't know. And these people are all human, and they're all there, and they're all trying to do a job, and they've all got their own motivations and aspirations and ambitions, and we don't know who has been corrupted and who, not everybody's good for their job, right? And do you think that people that only perform to perfection stay in their job at the FBI or in the sheriff's office, right? Just like Richard Allen got moved around, maybe people just get moved around out of divisions, right? We shouldn't expect that everyone is performing like, their key performance indicators are all met to a high degree. Some people just aren't good at their jobs. Some detectives are detectives because, there's a small county with a small amount of people, and there's a small number of men and women who are working in law enforcement, and there's a small amount of people that are staying there, and there's a small pool to draw from, and then so you go in and you become a police officer, and then you get on well with your superior officers, and so then you get asked to move into homicide or whatever, and then it just goes from there. You don't necessarily have to show that you were a problem solver, that you were a lateral thinker, that you were a critical thinker, that you were a mover and shaker, that you were willing to do various things that would give you a great aptitude for, being in certain divisions and teams, right? So, we look up to these people. We're told to put this huge faith in people, but we don't know. We're just looking at a human being, and we're looking at someone that we don't have nuance. We have no nuance knowledge of, right? And history does show that. History does show that sometimes our faith is ill-placed. But, I would say for the majority of the team that this has just been really a defining case in their lives, in their careers, that they have all probably tried very hard. And I would say there might have been some type of, maybe there are people that would have had the idea and or would have wanted to put their effort, their manpower, their intellectual property into things like, hey, let's go back and look at that first 20 people again. But because of the higher up and because of following orders and the directives, and if you don't, well, you're out of a job or you're out of favor. We've all been in that position where we actually know what's best, we can perform better, and you've got bad management where they are not putting the people forward that know, because they're threatened, or whatever, right? So they're not using their team well, and they don't, they've just got a different way of being, or, it's just bad management, bad decision making, and they've held back justice, they've held back knowledge, they've held back advancement that can happen. Hey, pigs fly. At this stage though, until I see it, I'm not going to be too down, because I don't think they really had to, unless they thought maybe he was getting used to, maybe he had, what resources did they use? Were they looking at the people that were putting houses up for sale? And that sort of thing right from the start, someone wanting to move, right? Putting businesses up for sale. It turns out to be not Richard Allen, but, wouldn't you just love to know how many ways they've thought about how they can identify possible suspects? What the fuck was I saying? And so, but, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater right now. I feel that after all this time, unless something that we don't know about was happening with Ellen, and they did know it was Ellen, they weren't really under pressure any more than they were last year to bring a result, right? They gain absolutely nothing by bringing false charges or weak charges. We know it certainly happens. This is just part of the problem, particularly people that have followed the Morphew case. We know what, but this is a situation that was different again with Morphew. For example, we had DA Linda Stanley come in, like sweep in, not even understand the case, but just know that it was one for her belt, and she forced hand and arrested Morphew, and she shouldn't have, right? There's been nothing happened like that in this case. Sure, there's an election coming. Did Tobe move too quickly? Well, he wasn't around. I understand that he and Carter were both away. I don't think it's anything like that at all. I think they weren't under any more pressure suddenly. They're under immense pressure, but no more than last year. And I don't think anything's forced it. I think they've come across something. They've realized that they have their man, at least to some level, and they've gone for it. But, why does McClelland say the things he does? What are your ideas on, you must be sick of hearing me talk. I'm even getting croaky, aren't I? What are your ideas on what McClelland has said about, he thinks there's other people? Do we think that's he's being more direct? And do you think that Carter's tentacles is ridiculous? God, I wish he'd just stop it, the theatrics. But that might just be who he is. I can't knock that sort of thing, can I? I'm theatrical. Do you think they're kind of just on the same page there? They're just talking about it a different way? What do you think? Blind Squirrel says Richard Allen's charges will stick, in their opinion. And Kenneth Carroll, hi Kenneth, says, looks like Allen has several family members buried at the Masonic Cemetery. In a small town, maybe they were looking out for each other in the good old boy network, or they just missed it. Do they want to hide a murderer amongst their ranks, though? Because until you get to a certain now, sure, yeah, the good old boy network, well, sure, they help each other succeed in business and things like that, but they are also there to help the town succeed, to help agendas succeed. Having murdered children does not help them succeed. Wrapping them up and getting rid of that scourge and looking to have done the right thing would help them keep succeeding, because it's, it's going to give the impression that they don't stand for nonsense, even though they might be as corrupt as all heck, right? The Masonic thing, I've looked at that in the past. It's true that in small towns like that, they're actually, it's not just in cities and things like that. It exists everywhere, and it's generation after generation, and definitely in Delphi, 100%. But the myth, or what would you say, I guess the myth talked about by people that aren't a Freemason, aren't in that sect or whatever, the myth is that it's only the 33rd level that understand what Masons are really committing to, who the higher power is, that they are acting in the name of. And so what happens is they are groomed and indoctrinated through levels, okay, just like happens in all these other places in society, for many reasons. So they're brought in, they have value, they are initiated with rituals that are repeated, right? And they don't understand the rituals that they are performing. And they actually also are kind of tricked because they don't understand the literalness of some of the rituals when it gets to the point of the hanging, the noose around the neck. And they think that there is this real true brotherhood or sisterhood, because there is a Freemason parish in the UK with women, maybe elsewhere as well. So it's too late, and they have pledged their souls to this higher power, which turns out to be Lucifer, the illuminator, the light bearer, and they've done it for years and years, up and intonating, performing, just like performance, any ritual. And they're not asked. You see, they can be any denomination of belief. You don't have to be Catholic. You don't have to be, you could be anyone in society with any background of a religious nature, right? All you have to do is pledge to a higher power. That's all you're asked to do. So when you're giving your this work you're going to do, and it's in the name of a higher power, it's a trickery, okay? It's a deception. This is the myth, okay? This is the myth. And they can't be seen to be turning all these blind eyes, not to this degree, surely, and to be seen to be harboring. Yeah, I mean, I know it's all interesting. We see them doing the yoni sign sort of thing, right? This steepling. At times we see certain men folk to do with the Delphi murders, you know, the law enforcement and everything. And you know, so it makes people think of that, you know, these closed ranks, the signaling to one another, hey, yeah, I got this. When people are saying certain things on stage or whatever, maybe, you know, I mean, I sit there and do it. I get accused all the time. What signs are you throwing, right? I mean, some people really express with their hands, and some poses are natural to put your, you know, hands into and things like that, right? Okay. People who present for a living, maybe, you know, you learn to subdue gestures and not make certain gestures and that. But, you know, for most human beings with any sort of extroversion in them, you know, or disinhibitedness, they're going to use their hands, they're going to use their face, they're going to express, they're going to use modulation of tone, and they're going to try and use expressive language, you know. It's part of communication. And sometimes it means nothing, and sometimes it's just subconscious, sometimes it's just comfortable, you know, so I don't know. But yeah, sure. I mean, I've looked at that too, and I have made videos about it because I've made videos on lots of subjects about Delphi. Just to, you know, because, okay, that's come up. Should we explore it? Let's talk about it. But I don't know. Would they? What do they gain by having someone who is a liability? Because do you think they got what they wanted? Look, if they wanted money for trails and money to upgrade, what someone would have done, and it would have been difficult 1-on-2, so it would have been a couple of people, they would have ambushed someone on the bridge and pushed them off, and then that way they could get railings on the bridge, which is what is it's one thing that was brought up about the improvements to the trail system by the Historical Society, and I think they should. I can't stand these, you know, people that want to pull down something so historic rather than just make it safe and maybe have, you know, yeah, sure, it might be a bit morbid, but we understand the movement of time. And, you know, there's a value there that they should not, that Delphi exists because of this line. Delphi exists because of the waterways and that railway. That's why the town is there. It's all part of its history, and it should not be destroyed. That trail system should continue to the end of the Monon High Bridge. They have fixed up the foundations to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. They have made that safe, the pylons, and anything is only as good as the foundation, right? Anything in life. It's all only as good as the foundation. The work you put into raising a puppy, you know, anything. Okay, so I think they should. I think they should fix the bridge. I think they should make it safe. I think they should put railings. I think they should extend viewing decks, and I think they should make it a destination. That's what they've been doing with the town. These trails are really important. They're really beautiful. People, the same way that the snowbirds who take their money away from the county when they leave and go and spend it elsewhere in the sunshine for 6 months, people are also coming into Delphi and that region to stay, to do outdoor activities, to camp, to boat, to kayak, to explore. And why not? And that when they get there, there should be beautiful places to stay. There should be things to do in the town, like entertainment. So the Grand Old Opry, the Opry House is open. There's an event on coming up. I posted it on my community page. If anyone's local, go and support them. Now, the judge recusing himself, I did ponder, was he so scared of what wasn't in the affidavit? Is that why he recused himself? It kind of made a little bit of sense. I thought, look, what if he's not actually intimidated? But I think he's probably someone that's maybe seen and watched with interest and fear and loathing. He's watched the shenanigans that YouTubers have spat and shot at people in Delphi, and maybe he hasn't wanted a bar of it. And maybe when they have outed rudely his children and where he lives, maybe he's thought, okay, this would, make or break my career. I have to expect this, but shit, this is scary. Maybe his wife said, no, please don't do this, right? But I admit to a fleeting thought today when I was thinking about, making this video. Oh, did he not see, were our worst fears realized? And is that why he recused himself? Because he didn't think this was a case. He just thought it was going to be a shit show because they don't have anything. But I don't think so. Yeah, I think he understood. I think he understood that his young family were vulnerable and he just didn't want a bar of it, and he took an option that was open to him, and someone else has been able to step in. So are they from a county called Allen County, this female judge? Is it Allen County? Isn't that interesting? The bridge is no place for kids or ladies alone there. Too dangerous. Look, I would have been running, if I lived in Delphi. I'd love to live in a little town like Delphi. What a beautiful little town. And I'd be running up and down and cycling on those trails, running with my dogs, and I would have climbed over the bridge eventually, no doubt. I would have been down in the creek, would have been fishing, would have been exploring. I would have gotten in and floated downhill. I would have bought a canoe. You take advantage of your locality, and I think people should be visiting there. Maybe they need to get some bloody lights out there. They need to put trail cameras out there, and they should be able to use it and enjoy it. And future generations, yeah, sure, it will still be, people still are going to talk about Abby and Libby, but I don't think people should be made afraid of these places and of living life. I don't think people should make stupid mistakes and take silly risks. That's part of what youth do. That's part of why youth do things like cross the high bridge. But, youth is not wasted on the young. It's exactly where it should be. Otherwise, no one would do anything. No one would have any fun. Shit, what? Now, Eric, where did you hear that? Eric says he heard today that they're dismantling the bridge. I think that is absolutely foul. It should just be made safer. Put a railing up, make it safe. Leave it at that. People are adults, so this whole conspiracy where it's the historical society and it's, it's McCain's and whomever else. Well, they just would have pushed someone off the actual bridge, not killed them nearby on Ron Logan's land. Yeah, just safe and they could lay something down and just tar seal over the whole lot of it, and they could put railings up, and that'd be it, right? No one has had an accident there to this date. It's the isolation, and it's the fact that there are predators that have, that's what's caused this situation. It's not the bridge. It's not the history of the town. The history of the town should be honored. People should be educated in it. It should be taught in their schools, and it should be available for visitors. There should be information centers, and people that visit should be able to access things in the community and goods and services that are local to the town, bringing in revenue. There should be concerts in town, people to come into, and they've got a museum, they've got a lot to explore, they've got so much to offer. It is so beautiful. I mean, we have all gasped and just at the beauty of the woods and the creek at the different times of year. It's gorgeous. Oh, lips, please. Oh, don't put that out there, because that's going to happen. That's going to happen. Yep. That'll be the next thing that you hear, that will it be that they hear someone saying down the hill once after Richard Allen is, if this alleged killer is maybe put to death, or will it be that they hear just someone crying out, Libby, or here's what I think, because of course we've got the situation, right, where people are saying that this is false footage, found footage, or whatever, that it's all planted and it's fake. Okay, so what they're trying to say, that 43 seconds doesn't exist, and that the family haven't seen more than this 1.8 seconds, and that's all that's there. Yeah, it all should be preserved, Betsy, and all the old towns, the homes and the old businesses. I hate when everything gets mowed down. It just destroys everything. Yeah, it's awful. And here's what I think. I don't think necessarily there's any more than 4 words, and I've made a video about that in the past, but I think there is more footage, and I think what is on there leaves no shadow of doubt. Okay, and I think maybe the phone flashes across Libby's face or Abby's face, and I think there is an expression of utter terror, and I just, that's what I believe. And so are the people that have hypnotized others into believing that this is not a man on the bridge, that this is not Abby on the bridge, that nothing exists from that day. So these 43 seconds don't exist as well. This is wow, imagine this war room, right? It's taking in every single fucking, it's taking in hundreds of people, and they're all on the same page, and they've all got to be up to date. I mean, heck, you've worked in a business where there's more than 10 people, and there's always some fucker who doesn't really get what's going on, or he forgets something, or misunderstood, or isn't with the program. But you got to believe this about Delphi, right? or they think this whole 43 seconds, they conveniently, they never mention that. They don't mention that, right? I would like to go to that bridge and try. I mean, I am as scared of heights as the next person. Um, but I think I have faith in my physical ability to walk out across something like that. If you can just, keep your concentration and yeah, I have faith in my physicality, as wrecked as it is at this, from various things. But yeah, I would do it, and I think it would be lovely to go out and just be able to go out and sit out on one of those platforms, or just in the middle of the bridge and listen to the water and listen to whatever wildlife's around, and yeah, watch the deer as they come and go, depending on the season, and get to know the pulse of the area, and to, really just to feel its rhythms, it'd be really lovely. And it would be so spectacular out there at every time of year. I don't think I'd want to walk on it when it's snowing, even though it would be beautiful then too, because that would be slippery and dangerous. So again, it's coming back to not being completely stupid. It had to have been a Native American Indian. What's PC to say? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't. Lipsha says it's lovely and serene out there and makes the murders even more obscene. Yeah, because they desecrate. It desecrate. Is that the word? Don't want to say it. Desecrated something. It spoiled something. Yeah, it darkened something. It stole something away from that town, right? And it's affected a lot of people, even if they're not, this sounds terrible, don't take it this wrong way. They're not affected by the girls going as such, but just even in, so those emotional feelings and the way that it affects the decisions in life, but also, yeah, they've been affected their way of life and their passions, their life's work has all been affected. Some people's livelihoods have probably been affected. Yeah. Yeah, you can get really reflective about it, can't you? Really, you can go into these really intense reveries thinking about that sort of stuff. But yeah, it just destroyed a community, and I think they've come out very strong. I have talked about the weird things that I've found weird or whatever over the years. There's plenty, and I've questioned, could PB, okay, be the murderer? I've been convinced that he's a good candidate at some moments in time for various reasons. But yeah, just to talk these things through. But yeah, so much loss, so much loss. And people are being dissed and attacked for trying to make something out of it, for trying to keep their community glued together and to offer something. And yeah, sure, it's so funny when people say, oh, that's a really weird way to act. It's a really funny thing to say. As if they would have any fucking clue. It's not them, and sometimes I think they can't even be bothered or have the mind to even try any sort of mental exercise, right? Because often they're not doing any mental exercises. They're the repeaters and the um, good night, Kenneth. Thanks for however long you've been listening to me wanking on, and thank you for taking part in the comment section too. Yeah, thank you everyone who's been chatting to each other down there while I just waffle on up here. Yeah, really appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, it's the small town. It's diverted a lot of resources. Um, would they be going to commit even more resources to a lost cause if they didn't think that they were going to convict Richard Allen? Oh, I wish he'd just plead guilty and, save the whole further circus, right? And yes, sorry I didn't get back to that, Kenneth. Um, it is definitely interesting. And because isn't that cemetery there the Masonic cemetery, right? Because there's other cemeteries around and there'll be family cemeteries, just like with uh, too far away a case, but yeah, anyway. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Kenneth, but that's something interesting to look at actually. Eric said before, I heard it's on a criming shame or the MOB crew, the mob crew. What was that, Eric? Um, oh, that they're removing the cross. Okay, so they're just removing the cross ties. Okay. Well, they will probably, if they're doing that, they could go and you know why Sunny called her show It's a Criming Shame? Because it's total marketing. I mean, it's marketing genius, really, isn't it? If you think, oh, well, that show It's a Crime is really good, people find me if they're looking for It's a Crime. But yeah, maybe they'll take those cross ties. Those timbers are so old and they're really strong. They're usually ironbark or something, whatever are they? And they can go and build something, a memorial, a sculpture. Maybe they could go and use them in the ballpark as part of the bleachers or part of structures there or as part of landscaping at the ballpark. Um, is that you saying good night to Kenneth or good night yourself, Bets? If you're going, good night and thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah, that town's lost a lot and it's been a great pressure and they've all been under scrutiny, but maybe some people not as much as they should have, right? Because they didn't catch Richard fucking Allen. But and they don't have a lot of resources, okay? There are some rich families, of course, and people who may not be monetarily rich, but who have very long-standing ties with the area through all sorts of good and bad history. And and it means something to be there, to be from Delphi and to be from Carroll County. But we've got to remember there's 20,000 people. It's not a lot. There's not a lot of income. And this is why they do things like outsource 911 calls, which we should have heard. But maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Won't get into that again just now. But, they don't have a lot of resources. Would they be going forward with what is going to be a very expensive trial? There will be families that have their fingers in all the pies and have done for so long that they're just simply rich, right? And they're trying to preserve their legacies, right? So the McCains are trying to preserve their legacies, particularly of their mum, who, was a huge part of preserving the culture and, the history there, right? And there'll be people that, always had industry in the area, but a lot of industry's gone. I mean, Randy Gravitt would be able to tell you a lot about that. There were different industries. Now it's coming from packers. But, there were furniture companies there and things like that, and they're out of business. But maybe there were furniture companies because they're making timber furniture from the logging and everything, and it's just died out. But there could still be sort of this old money, so to speak, there. There will be some new money coming in. There are some entrepreneurs. There's all sorts of people. But a lot of people will just be regular people, right? Is that the way to say it? I don't know. But, the median, right? And a lot of them will be struggling as well. It's not particularly rich county, and there's not a large population to support all this infrastructure. And it seems sometimes like it's really hard for people to understand things like that. But then, we do see inside the council and all those meetings going on where these fucking people on the council, they're just signing it away, and they are just being so irresponsible, and they are not doing their job, right? And there needs to be more, transparency, and people need to take more, but see, this is it, right? Sometimes it feels like there are some YouTubers that give a shit more about what's going on in the running of the town, the running of the county, than the people there themselves. Like, so you think, look, fuck, if they're not going to turn up to council meetings, if they're not going to hold these people accountable, the people that are just letting all the donations come in for Tony Liggett and are just signing things off, turning these little blind eyes, as if that's just the thing to do, or as if they don't have any choice, or as if they're not even thinking about it, because there's that mindless apathy and that just maintain the status quo, maintain your status, maintain your special position, right? I mean, this is always the way. This is often the way when people are have tenure and things like that. And, we all know the businesses where people are in for so long that, and the account, Jan in accounts has been here for 30 years. Oh, red flag, right? You know that she's going to be a fucking problem. Okay. I think people should be moved in and out. Okay. They should not be holding long standing positions of secretary and all of that, right? And that there should be better things set up in place where their decisions, we've got them making decisions about what they think their citizens can handle as far as information coming out about flora fire, and just deciding that no, nanny state, and that's not their role. It's not their role it's their role to perform duties that meet the standards of the law. That's it. And instead they're deciding outside of the law what citizens are allowed to have access to as far as right? Okay, so maybe they didn't want to spend the $30,000, right? They didn't want to spend the money to get these 911 calls released because they are outsourcing, okay? There's such opportunity for quality homes to be built there. Yes, Otto. And look how inexpensive you could buy property in Delphi, right? You could set yourself up for a beautiful future there, with a really beautiful homestead and with a way of life that, is just so satisfying and restful. And I hope that this, can all be resolved and satisfactorily. And that they can be really proud of themselves, and that, you know, healing can start. And, you know, Delphi does not deserve to just fade and die like we see happen to so many towns. Why should it? Okay, and it shouldn't be taken down by bureaucrats and predators and, you know, all of that palaver, when it's just got so much to offer. And it's not right, in my opinion. Yeah, so maybe the bridge remaining up, but removing the cross beams, at least the first, you know what, 100 feet either way, right? And then using those somewhere maybe to make another, you know, make another swing bridge, or make another bridge, or make something at Riley Park or something. Flora's burnt house hasn't been, I know, Otto, it hasn't been restored. I mean, I wonder what's happening there, why it's in limbo. You know, surely if people want it, I mean, is it still owned by those two people? Or could they sell it? And why hasn't it been bought? And is there just, you know, there's no one around that would buy it? I mean, they would get it for a steal. Maybe they just don't want to live there. But that is a historic house. It's had tragedy there, but let's say this devastating tragedy didn't happen. That's the type of home that maybe should be restored. I don't know. And maybe now it's better that it's pulled down. And a park put there, or a new dwelling. And it's sad, but people in time, I mean, in time, just things, yeah, new things can be where other things, yeah, don't exist any longer. Didn't say that very well. Yeah, it maybe it should be. Maybe the owners don't want to pay for it to be taken down and cleared. Maybe there is, I don't know, could there possibly be some legal reason as to why it's still there, because of the ongoing case? That case is still open. You know, I have a very unpopular opinion about that fire. The population of Delphi is something like 2,900. Yeah, it should even have a sign just up saying, you know, this is the site of what's known as the Flora fire, and these, you know, girls perished, and yeah, something, right? Yeah. But there's a lot of, I guess, you know, it's a major incident, but there's a lot of bad stuff happening all around in Lafayette and Flora, and no case that you've known that would leave that there like that. I'm trying to think if I do know of something that's happened to. Yeah. It just does seem, actually, you know, upon reflection, it does just seem in poor taste that nothing's been done, that even just a chain link fence, you know, 8-foot chain or 7-foot chain link fence hasn't been just put around the property or something, right? It is pretty bizarre. Look, you know, hopefully Carter can now move on full speed with resolving Flora, but I feel like it's never going to be resolved. Yeah, there were two owners. Otto. Oh, you think a fence has been put up there? Okay, I'm trying to think of the photo that I last saw, what year that would have been taken. Maybe it's just a really old photo. Yes. Well, right. So many suspicious fires and just awful deaths of people. You think, is this out of proportion with the population, the people that are dying? Yeah, it is pretty bizarre. And people just climb over it and they go and have a look, do they, Eric? Yeah. I feel like I would have a really morbid curiosity about it because I am quite a morbid person, clearly, with what I um, get intrigued by and everything. I mean, I'm a true crimer, I guess. Yeah. Um, just before I go, then, let's just veer right off topic. Who's been following the... Last week it didn't have a fence, yeah. Who's been following the Idaho University way too many for towns of that size? I mean, Lipshut, in some, if you looked at it, you could look at it from one angle and say, well, it's just it's just a common way to find a solution to a problem, and maybe people feel like they can get away with it more there than where, other investigations might, be a bit stronger, but as in insurance things and that sort of thing. But yeah, you've been watching it, JK. Yeah, because of a lot of the channels, we've got that we see each other on, Alex Erickson for one, following that. I'm really invested in that. Do you think that holding out for DNA to come back on that case, on the Idaho 4 bets? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, someone, though, was making a point about the Idaho University having the agricultural sector or whatever and the veterinary sector and how they raise funds for, that because, people that want to be farmers and things, they go in and they get their degrees, they study agriculture and husbandry and things like that, depending on what type of farming they want to do. And so part of the university's fundraising is to have their own meatworks. So with a meatworks, I mean, I remember going as a child, and it's funny because Just Kay was having, she might be, she's older than me, I think. Maybe she's the same age, but we have the same memory of going with our mother out to, well, she was going to, I'd go to the abattoir with my mother sometimes in a place called Matamata, and the butcher would come out and they're in there, it's the head to toe gear, right? And the boots and the jumpsuits and the aprons and everything. They come out and that smell, yeah. And yeah, they'd give me a polony, it's like a big Cheerio. It's like a hot dog, kind of. And yeah, Just Kay has the same memory of going in and being this little girl and the butcher always giving her this particular type of this pre-cooked sausage. Yeah. But so that's part of the commerce side of the university, is to have their meatworks. So there's students and teachers, but students with access to PPE, so the personal protection equipment and gear. So boots, gloves, suit, hat, all of the things that will prevent your clothing getting splattered, your body getting damaged, and you leaving hair or saliva or whatever may be, right? And having access to knives. And you've got, do you think the person that has killed, skinned, and filleted a pet dog 3 miles away from the Idaho 4 home. Do you think that that person might have been studying the butchery or been part of the butchery team at Idaho University and thought they wanted to hurt something innocent and trusting? Imagine you go into someone's yard and the little dog's there and it doesn't bark because you just, hey, little bud. Yeah, and his name's Buddy, actually. And then you cut its throat and you butcher it, skin it, and then you flay it. And, that is definitely a stepping stone to then going on to killing people. And I think it's true that there's also been a spate of killings of coyotes. Mostly people will just know how to deal with coyotes, right? And you don't leave your rubbish out and you bring your pets inside and blah, blah, blah. And no, so these coyotes apparently have been killed and left on people's decks and on their dog beds, and the blood is smeared everywhere. I mean, and we're told by investigators that none of these things are related. None of it's related. They can say that definitively. I think we get a problem. I think there is a problem and there's a conflict of interest in these university towns or in these towns of certain industry where their livelihoods rely on it. That university, with the students coming from out of state, maybe even international students, maybe Mormons from all around the world wanting to come to Idaho University as part of like a rite of passage, or this part of, just, it's probably, I would guarantee you it's probably a thing. I don't know, but and particularly if they're, I must look into this because, you want to know what it is that they're specifically offering. And just like certain people want to go off to a law school and want to go to Harvard, or they might want to Yale, or they want to study to be a doctor. So they want to go to certain schools. That Idaho University could well attract people, from all over who want to go into certain careers and lifestyles. And this is money, right? This is a huge income. It's just like, unfortunately, we open a gateway, say in Australia, for example, for spies from China. A lot of income comes into, say, the Melbourne University by having these international students, and these international students are coerced, right? And they learn and they make contacts, and they are owned by their own governments, or else, right? Okay, or else, and it is a real thing. But there's a lot of people at this university, and there's a lot of people learning these skills, and maybe in the same way that, we know there's abattoir workers that have been serial killers. There's a female one in Australia. And yeah, they turn to killing. I mean, for Delphi all along, people have queried, is this someone from Packers, but wouldn't you think? I mean, maybe because the type of killing was so specific, the Idaho 4, and maybe there's so much that we just don't know that was so obvious from the scene that, yeah, perhaps they can say it, but it just seems so bizarre to not be connected somehow. I don't know. There's isolated incidences of these brutal slayings. The fact that, it's a thing in the university to be killing, dressing, and selling animal products. And all the equipment's there. It's happening outside of the university in neighborhoods, and then the extension of that is, that the Idaho 4 had their lives brutally taken away with zero mercy. Yeah, I just saw about the coyotes, and wasn't it a beautiful pup? They call it an Aussie Shepherd. It looks like it might have Aussie Shepherd in it, or maybe it was still just a puppy. I don't know. It didn't quite look like an Aussie Shepherd, but I know Americans do have cattle dogs and, healers and things over there, and there's a lot of Aussie Shepherds over there. Isn't it interesting that the dog was not killed, right? Now, there's enough precedents where people go in and they don't kill the dog. But there's plenty where they do as well, right? And these are people that are killing their own dog while they're killing their family. But the dog wasn't killed, right? Which is interesting. And from what we understand, it was still there, even though the dog was Kaylee's. She'd moved out, and wasn't it Kaylee's and her boyfriend, Jack? But maybe he hadn't taken guardianship of the dog away from the house yet. And I understand that Kaylee was moving, and she'd already moved. I closed down. I believe the dog knew who it was. Oh, I know, doing that to your own dog, Betsy. Yeah, your own dog. It's, Pat Brown was saying, I can't remember when, maybe recently, she was saying, oh, well, she found a dead bird once, and because she was homeschooling her children at the time, she taxidermied it. Yeah. But, if it's your own cat or dog, yeah. Look, one thing about the dog, though, a dog in a social environment, in a social household, used to people coming and going, maybe not having its spidey senses up. All the person would have to do is acknowledge the dog, or something. I don't know. It could have just been so groomed into, so desensitized is what I'm trying to say. The dog was probably just so desensitized to people coming and going of all hours, that really it's actually not relevant, and it's not a big deal. Yeah, blind squirrel. I think we can't say that he's not a person of interest. And I don't want people to go and attack him and make these very invasive roadways into his life. I mean, it is interesting what is coming out, though. I don't think people should be harassed. I feel like this is the job of law enforcement, to do their fucking job and to make sure they actually have people. Because, hey, Richard Allen came forward supposedly, right? Grub truck guy knew that he might still be recognized, even though he was clearly trying to keep in the shadows. Yeah, I don't think they should be saying anyone is cleared. And I don't think they really are they? I think they're just saying that they've talked to people. And they've been in contact with people. But yeah, I think he has to be a candidate. And sorry if I am saying that about an innocent person. Yeah, I mean, look, what was she calling him about? Was she trying to call because they'd heard something outside? Well, then why weren't they calling 911? Was she just drunk dialing and then she got her friend to call because, I mean, he won't pick up my number, you call him. Or was she just using her friend's phone to call him for the last few minutes of that block of time, right? Um, I had, yeah, I was thinking about a few things that it might be that they were calling about. Was she calling because she eventually did want him to come over, even though she hadn't wanted to hang out with him that night because she was with her friend? And then thought she did want him to come over. Had he done something and then they had been discussing it and they wanted to confront him about it? Yeah, I mean, his phone might be there. It doesn't mean he was. And his DNA is going to be in the house still. And so that's a bit of a tricky one, right? Yeah. And, would he have wounds? A scratch, something on him? And, Jack from the grub track, I mean, surely he would have changed out of those white shoes, right? But, how much follow through do the police do? Do they just go, okay, spoke to him, oh, he's saying he's there. No one in their right mind would do that if they were guilty. But, have they followed up everything else? His movements, did they actually go and talk to him face to face? And did they ask for fingerprints? And did they ask him for a DNA swab, right? If not, I mean, we're all sick to death of learning too late that too little was done, right? This is why I talk about this police work. A clear route in and out of the house is through that little wooded area, right? Does that go off toward the botanic? And then maybe even off through the botanic. And Jake from the grub truck, someone was just saying, lives on the other side of that. But why was that not cordoned off and a line of people just gone through already? Because civilians, I mean, people have walked through there. People have been there now. And there are people, I can guarantee you, there'd still be people that know nothing about the murders, maybe. I mean, they're just living without TV or radio or whatever, or not reading the newspaper. And, they've walked through those woods. And they should have been cordoned off and just gone through. Got a DNA sample from him. Oh, no, that's the ex-boyfriend, yeah. Yeah, but I'm wondering if they got a DNA sample from the guy from the grub truck who walks through the girls. He literally walks through Maddie and Kaylee to stand outside of the beam of light. He turns his cap around and puts on his hood. And then as he's standing there, he then checks his phone so it reflects up in his face. Now, is he just checking the time? Sure. Or checking if he's got a text? Sure. What if he's looking at the live feed? Okay, and saying, okay, I'm in the shadow. What a dunce. Maybe not because he's thinking of committing murder, but he just doesn't want to be recognizable. It doesn't make sense. Maybe on his little screen phone, he can't see that he's going to be so recognizable by his clothing, because maybe he's looking at that and he thinks it's more shadowy than it is, right? But it looks like, yeah, he looks at his screen. Then what he does is when they move up in order and he moves and he's standing just outside that rim of light fall, he looks at it again. It's as if he's looking again to check his space. And there's a part of time when he's talking to Cardigan Guy when it would have been natural a little bit to move forward, to shift, but he doesn't. He remains, he holds a bit fast, and Cardigan Guy comes back and into that conversation. But that's just if you were being cynical, or whatever, or if in hindsight he turns out to be the guy and you're analyzing it, this is what you'd look at. And then he's overly being relaxed and carefree with the way he moves, but his feet are always angled. His feet are, he's more open toward the girls. And when they get their food and they dash off, when he glances over, he does this quick check, and when he sees that he won't be seen going, he dashes. And then, of course, does he pretend it's just off the screen? Does he do the finger, or does he just pretend to do a little see ya, and then he runs off? But he goes with such purpose. Is it to grab his car quickly because he's seen them in a car? He knows what vehicle. Did he circle round? Is there street cameras on part of these streets that might see his car go from a car park and come around to follow the girls? Or did he already know where they lived? Did he drive like a bat out of hell there first, park and watch them go in, or park and climb over through those woods? It's possible, right? I don't want to just hear that they've spoken to him. I'd love to hear that there is absolutely no way he's been positively cleared. But look at how pathetic it is in the Delphi case when no one is cleared. I mean, how frustrating is that? And they're saying that in 6 years they can't clear they haven't cleared a single person. I mean, what the fuck have they been doing then if they haven't cleared a single person, right? It's stupid. It's the most pathetic. I'm so over the shenanigans of law enforcement. Right? He does, JK. And this whole not cleared thing. And that is not what we are being told about Grub Street Guy. And what sleuths, or what just people with local knowledge have come out and said, is that he was evicted out of frat house Sigma Chi, and that Sigma Chi, am I saying that right? Chi, C-H-I, is one of the frat houses that is known for being sort of more, say, boisterous, if you will, more troublesome, more aggressive in the things that they do, in the situations they find themselves in. They are more violent things that go on, right? It's Ethan's frat house. Apparently this guy's been kicked out of it. That's got a smart, right? And and Ethan was at a party that night, a party that this guy wasn't at, and he was at the corner bar. Has he seen these guys leave, or is he, look, he could just be the socially awkward person that was kind of hanging out with the girls at the concrete bar. They've said, oh, we're going now to get some food, and he's thought maybe this might mean me too, and he's walked across the road with them, but then they've, just walked by him. But no, he already knew that they weren't including him, because he just walks right through them and stands off, right? He knew they weren't including him, and they don't interact at all. There's one bit where there's a bit of gesturing by Maddie, I believe, and she kind of points at this guy, but they're kind of not wanting to, it's like they're not wanting to actually have a confrontation or start him. And, and maybe because they either don't want to make trouble or have a confrontation, or they think the best thing is to ignore someone, right? And they don't realize the possible danger, right? Okay, so sure, he could be harmless, but a harmless person who, even if they're not interested in him, and they would kind of, I don't think those two would be so cruel. They might just be kind of planning on ditching him, but maybe they would include him in conversation, or maybe he would have had the balls to go up and order some food, okay? And he would have just, socially awkwarded himself up into ordering food as well and thinking he's standing around with them. He wouldn't have been decoying with Cardigan Guy, okay? I think people that have been around the traps enough can look at that, and we've been in enough situations, we've seen enough people acting in enough ways where we know it shouldn't be discarded. They clearly don't. Even if he's taken it upon himself to, I just want to make sure I get you ladies home. He doesn't say anything when they step off the curb and onto the pavement to come round. He doesn't go, I'll just be here. I'm just going to make sure you get, there's nothing. And then he goes up and he decoys with Cardigan and Guy, trying to create this conversation, create a reason to be there, because he's just standing around like a knob, right? He's not ordering food. He's not waiting for friends. So he, I think, pretends to indicate that maybe he's actually with these girls. And so Cardigan Guy sees them go. He goes, hey, they've gone. But he makes sure that he's not looking. The way he dashes off as soon as the guy turns his back, right? It's odd. It's off. I don't give a fuck if, yes, sure, he goes up and to the right and into the car park. I don't care that he came forward, because he knows, it's like he knows there's a CCTV, like a knob. He knows there's a CCTV. I feel like they all know that there's a live feed. It looks like he's aware of it. He covers himself up. There's no need to spin his hat around and put his hoodie up. Maybe it's cold and he wanted to put his hoodie up. Well, you have to spin your cap around, I guess, to get your hoodie up, right? But there are other people that are there without hats, without hoodies up. They seem to be okay. Was he really that cold? His hat was keeping his head warm enough, right? But no, he's in the shadow. He spins his hat. He puts his hoodie up. He seems to check his position maybe, but he knows enough that, oh, look, there's a person that does that. Same time, maybe he realized, maybe later he reviews the footage and he sees how clearly he can be identified anyway, because his white Nikes with the black swoop, his brown jacket, his black jeans, his white or light grey hoodie, even the shape of his face, the colour of his skin, the shape of his nose, the shape of his chin, even though there's a lot of this blurriness to one point where it's quite scary because it looks like Scream, the hood and the stretched skull with no features. It's quite... So he probably, perhaps, had no choice but to come forward. When he got home and he looked on his Mac, okay, I feel like he's operating Mac. I don't know. And he looks and he sees on the big screen, well, actually, he's a lot more recognizable than he thought from when he was looking at his smartphone and checking the live feed. One at 1 minute and something, and one at 2 minutes. I wrote it. I've had at it the other day. I was, yeah. And then he realizes when he sees it on a bigger, on a VDU that, or on a laptop, on whatever, what I'm trying to say. So perhaps he felt like, oh, I should just come forward, because if they come and find me, will I be able to say, oh, I didn't know anything about this? Because maybe someone else where he's living now or whatever might say, I told you about that. We talked about it. Okay. I hope police are being sure and not rushing. they seem to be writing off so many things. And now we are hearing whispers of, is it, something military related? It could be the butchery related, you know. He is suspicious. He is. It's just the bottom line. And, I don't think people should do what happened to Truckee and, ruin his life like they have with Sammy and with Jagger there because of the, Kylie Rodney's death. But law enforcement should be investigating him, and he needs to realize that whatever he was doing, it was fucking creepy, and he's brought this on himself because it was creepy, because he looks like a creeper, and he looks like someone that was unwelcome, unwanted, and he could be going through a lot. There have been a lot of triggers in his life, so it would seem, right? And yeah, we know more and more how capable people like this, like these random young men are. They are capable of getting a weapon and shooting people up. They are capable of driving a weapon, motor vehicle, and mowing people down. They are capable of one-on-one slaughter, dismember, all sorts. We know, and it's guys like this, okay? It's not wrong to wonder, but I do think, yeah, I wish that there was some way that we could have faith in law enforcement, that they are actually doing all the right things smartly, and that this is just a state of this is how it is now, is that we have huge our faith is tried and tested too many times, right? We are all so jaded and cynical and untrusting and second guessing people, right? And they all get lumped in the same boat with all of these, corrupt or just underperforming factions of, law enforcement organization and everything, constantly underwhelmed, and there are huge stakes. But, hopefully we're going to be, hopefully this person is going to be taken off the street, because this poor town of Moscow must be feeling absolutely terrorized and terrified. They have had their sense of safety and security, they got just stripped from them. But what I was saying about, what I started off saying about Idaho 4 was, we have to consider that commercial side of things where poor decisions might be made about safety and about communicating information, because so much is at stake because of income into the state, into the university, right? And there are some relationships there between law enforcement and, commerce and everything that, they should not exist. They shouldn't be beholden to each other. But unfortunately, even the law enforcement people's everyone's livelihoods are depending on people not withdrawing from college, people enrolling in the college, coming into town, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases per person a year, at least tens of dollars. And so you have to wonder, You have to wonder the same way you wonder about Delphi and the things that are said, or all these other crimes and the things that are said, because they need to protect, you know, all that's gone before, all that effort, all that investment, that whole future, you know. And I don't think Delphi should be relegated to be a ghost town, and it shouldn't be. It needs to be supported in presenting itself as a destination, and it needs to survive, and it deserves to survive. But you know, the people don't deserve to be lied to and fucked around either, and you have to really wonder. But you know, I think they've got Bridge Guy. In conclusion, I think got Bridge Guy. I don't know what happened after that. Felony murder fits with him being Bridge Guy. He looks like Bridge Guy. He's a local that would know the area. He, you know, is professing his innocence, of course, but so have other serial killers. As I said before about, you know, Green River Killer, you know, they'll play act it until they realize it's done, and then they'll just, yeah, actually it was me. Blind Squirrel. Has anyone discussed that Idaho killer could have been hiding inside the house from the get-go? It's a fairly large ranch-style house. Yep. And actually, you know, if it was, let's just say, if it was GTG, Grub Truck Guy, GTG, yeah, he could have taken off at pace and raced and got in there and parked and gotten in, or someone could have been there already earlier in the night because the home was empty during the night. Yeah, and Bundy, you know, of course, and they all do it, and they all lie about the depths of their depravity, you know. They lie about the reasons they've done it and that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, you know, this particular student accommodation, they were paying $2,000 a month. You know, it pays for, you know, a lot of people were earning money and supporting their lifestyles just simply because students are coming into town, people running the bars, people providing all sorts of food and services, clothing, everything. The whole entire town would revolve around there being this huge wave of students for big parts of the year, with international students paying even more. And, you know, and having that money means that things like, you know, hey, buildings can be renovated and roads can be kept pothole free, and you can have, you know, cultural centers, and you can have all sorts of things, right? And patrons of the arts and blah blah. Yeah, we don't even know if he went down there and tried the door. He may not have even realized that they lived there, you know. And if they were crashing in one room, there's one room like at one end of the downstairs that wasn't below the room that Ethan and Kaylee were probably in. So even if they heard something going on at first, they might have just thought it was people coming in, you know, to continue drinking something. And they might have just, you know, shut the door and tried to ignore it and just go to sleep because they didn't want to be disturbed. And yeah, maybe they did lock their door. Be interesting to know if there's locks on the insides of those doors. But he just might not have realized, or he might not have, you know, who knows what made him leave. Maybe his frenzy was over. I mean, people saying, oh, it's quiet. And if no, there is noise. There's noise cutting through flesh, blood pumping, there's gurgling, there's scuffling, there's thudding, there's all sorts of noise, even if it's short times and you mistake it for something else, wrestling, whatever, who knows. But it's still noisy to a degree, but it's exhausting, right? He didn't just go and go bang, 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 which would exhaust your adrenals, all of your hormone levels and everything going absolute haywire, but it would be physically exhausting. You just try and put yourself through those paces, right? You know, uh, the the whole thing of it all, the stealth of it all, and then the release and that physicality of actually doing this, right? And someone else that it's so intense, and then going somewhere else and there, and maybe into three different sites, three different rooms, maybe two different rooms. I feel like it's likely that there were two rooms being used. I feel like if it's true that Kaylee had already left and packed up, then her stuff was out of there. So there's no bed there, and friend's not going to make her sleep on the sofa. And so she's probably been crashed in Madison's room. We know that Ethan and Zaina were in the same room. Why would they not be? So he's just had to go to two, but he's had to quickly, maybe one to the other. We don't know, but it was a huge effort to go on and then kill two more. Right now, I'd say he was spent. He was done. And he just wanted to get out of there. And yeah, and if he didn't go off down to the street, I mean, yeah, and into a vehicle, he's gone through those woods, and yet 1 week later, they are going to search them. There could be a discarded bootie where he's covered his shoes. There could be a discarded glove. There could be bits of his hair. There could be bits of the girl's hair with blood. There could be, their long blonde hair. Can you imagine? He would be covered in it, right? It's going to be somewhere. It's going to be somewhere other than that scene. Their hair, their DNA. I guarantee it. 3 for collateral damage. So maybe he's gone in and he's had to kill 2 because there were 2 where he might have expected 1. But if he was going after Ethan, then he'd expect 2. So then the others have heard and come down, the girls maybe. And is that one of the girls that maybe stayed alive long enough to be found as unconscious the next day? But then did he go upstairs and find the one that didn't come down? Or is it more likely he's gone upstairs, killed the 2 girls, come down, and then attacked Ethan and Zaina? And maybe Ethan has survived and tried to get out. And so it's just maybe him lying there. Maybe they've seen a head and an arm coming out the doorway and haven't seen the horror beyond. And they haven't gone upstairs. So, we don't know. But, yeah. Yeah. Could he not have just killed 2? Yeah, I mean, it's like he's just really wanted to really live that experience. It says that, it is fulfilling a fantasy. It's something that one has imagined doing, and they're so determined, and they go and they carry it out. Yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, I hope this is not another one of these long, dragged out things that just fuels all the cockwomblery, right? Fuels, even against Grub Truck Guy. Yes, I know I'm talking about it, but, can you imagine what's in his future? The videos that are going to be made about him and yeah. That's why, sorry, as I keep repeating, that's why I really wish we could just rely on the proficiency of law enforcement and these people that are all around the world working in these places, and anything might happen, that they are just going to be trained to the degree where they know how to carry out a thorough basic investigation. It's not rocket science, you know. Uh, yeah. And let the magic and the woo woo and the, smarty pants stuff and the technological stuff, yeah, follow later. It should all just, support. It should be all just supported by police work. Yeah. Wow, I have been wanking on for 3 hours and 10 minutes. So I will go maybe 2 killers. Do you know what, Johnny? It could well be. There were the teenagers that they wanted to commit a scream-like attack, and yeah, these young dudes, high school dudes, decided on killing their friend, and they heard that she was going to be staying at a house. She wasn't normally to babysit a house and a dog or something, and they went, or just to be watching a house, and she stayed there on her own. She was frightened, but she didn't want to leave because she felt responsible. And a friend that was staying with her ended up leaving. And these guys came in and did a scream-like attack. And, I think there are things out there in the zeitgeist, things for people to, get fixated on. And it's giving people these ideas, and they're fucking psychopaths or sociopaths or whatever, and they just carry it out. They're fucking damaged. They're dead inside, and they want to hurt. Their lives. They have nothing that is making them feel, and they want that feeling. They want to feel something, and they want it to be intense. And it could very well be that type of killing. Yeah. And it could be a couple of guys. And that's how they managed to kill 4 people. Yeah. Yes, they did not give up, Betsy. They did not stop. They didn't stop. They knew what they had to do, and they did it. And they did right by Quentin Simon, and they found him. The teams, the leaders in the teams, they went through 1.4 million pounds of trash to find a few pounds of little baby Quentin. They are amazing, and they're just incredible. Oh, I can't even bear to look at that Leilani's face. Oh, I hate her so much. I can't, when can't stand to watch it. That interview that she did with her mother, and her mother's like, oh, oh. But, Billy Joel, yeah, she's really going through it. I get that. But, she knew her daughter couldn't be trusted, couldn't be relied on to bring up her own children, to even just babysit her own children. And so off she goes, because she works like a FIFO kind of thing, 30 days there, 30 days back. And she just left Leilani alone with these innocent, vulnerable children, this irreplaceable child. And so now she is just removed from society, and yeah. And Billy Joe has raised 2 murderers. Oh, hey Jen. Crime Curious. If no one's over, you probably already are already, but go over to Crime Curious. Yeah. Go now, so you'll be able to rewind if you do want to hear. We're just having a chat about Delphi, because and then we were having talk a little bit, yeah, about Idaho 4, which I am just completely invested in. I'm just so wrapped up in that. I mean, I'm watching everything I can or everything like that, but I'm thinking about it 24/7 since I heard about it. Um, yeah. Oh, they are such heroes, Blind Squirrel, the people that found Quentin. Um, yeah, they do. They let all sorts of things into your psyche, and you can feel like possessed, and but you know what? I don't care. I don't care. Leonie's drug problem or the way that she was brought up, with her mother. I it's not an excuse. I don't give a shit, you know. I never murdered a baby or, you know. Anyway, yeah, you can do it or you won't. You, you you're either that person or or you're not. Okay. It wasn't a silly accident. They're charging her with malice murder. So she's she's done something to this baby because she's a nasty piece of shit who wanted to be cruel. She didn't have to be aiming to take Quentin's life. She just needed to act in such a way that was malicious, that was to cause harm, that expressed hatred or, just complete disregard for safety and well-being, and he's died, and she has thrown him out like he is garbage. And without a thought, she's done it instantly. And then the stupid, unintelligent person, you know, has immediately then said, "Oh, my baby's missing," so that, alerted immediately and something can be done, right? She didn't even try to hide it to the end of the day, right? She's a shell. She's a shell. You can say people are demons or demon possessed or something like that, but I don't like to, I think of them as lacking rather than having, and just lacking in that empathy. And then even if, okay, an accident or you went too far, you're out of control, to then just and the cover up is just it's just piling it all on, right? To then not even try to get him help. Like, we don't even know what happened if she had called an ambulance. Just try to save your baby, right? And yet, no. And just, yeah, just obscene. Anyway, I'm going to give myself a headache if I keep talking on any longer. Gosh, some of you've been absolute troopers. Absolute troopers. Thank you so much for just listening to me, and thank you for engaging and your great comments, your feedback and your ideas. And we're going to look at the Masonic history of the graveyard in Delphi, and yeah, right. I mean, Casey, Anthony, and that's someone lacking as well, isn't it? Leilani had an older son. Was it Zane or Dwayne? 3 years old or something. She's got Quentin, and then she's had another baby, Sky, right? These 3. Put an IUD in. Did Billy not, So look, you've got to raise this child, Dane, I'm sorry, I don't know. You shouldn't be getting pregnant again. Boom, boom, right? The fuck? Bringing these precious little things in the world and, you know, to not care for them. You can see in videos that Billy Joe does adore them and everything. But she couldn't make a big enough sacrifice, though. The sacrifice of not going away to be this double income earning family. And I'm talking about her and her husband. I mean, we don't know what their financial situation was, and they had, Leilani and Danny. Danny was working. Danny should have been at least been able to provide for Leilani and the children something, right? But we don't know what the situation was with the mortgage or anything like that. But did Billy Joe have no option but to abandon those children with that useless, sorry excuse of a human being? And I don't believe it. I can't believe that. I don't believe it. I just think she made the decision because she wanted to have her independence as well, and she liked her job, and and wants to earn her money. And yeah, there probably was pressure to have financial stability, but she went away after telling Leilani and by proxy Danny and the kids that they were evicted. And she thought that they would just carry on being good, responsible citizens and not kick up and not react to that. These immature, useless people, that they wouldn't get, bit put out, bit like, take it out on the children, but resentful, but frightened, but annoyed that they have to find the money to find a place to look after themselves, where they're expected to leave the boys with Billy Joe and just go off with this little baby Sky once Billy Joe just returned from her job. And then what was Billy Joe going to do for the 30 days the next time that she had to go away? Leave them 24/7 with the babysitter down the street because the parents are away? Or would she have let Leilani have the boys back in whatever other dwelling? It's just something waiting to happen, right? And she needs to take responsibility. She recognized the situation. She knew that they weren't safe. And yet, can't quite go that extra mile. But now she's the victim. And look, many ways she is, but in many ways, she's an accomplice, or she's associated to this crime. She just left them and just hoped for the best. Maybe she'd gotten away with it in the past. Maybe she'd already done this before and come back, and they're all luckily surviving, not thriving, maybe, but surviving. And she got complacent and just, yeah. It was just foolish. Anyway, sorry. I mean, that is very, very judgmental of me. I am fully aware of how judgmental I am. All right, well, I'm going to sign off. I need to make some food. Everybody take care. It's 3, what time is it? I don't know. What time is it here? Oh my God. So it's 4:15 here. I want to be the mayor of Delphi. Do I, Big Sly? No, I don't want to be the mayor of Delphi. What time is it there? Where you guys are? 1:15 a.m. Oh my gosh. Yes. Get some sleep, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. The next time we chat, if it's live or if I just make a video, it's probably going to be on any developments to do with, the murders in Idaho University, at Idaho University. Unless something happens with Delphi, let's just have our fingers crossed that we get a redacted probable cause released, and soon. That's the least that the citizens of Indiana deserve after 6 years of their investment, etc. And yeah, she's a waste of everything. They're going to lock her up and throw away the key. She'll never be in society again, and that's how it should be. Yeah. All right. Cherry, bye. See you later. Thank you so much, everybody.